Hello and welcome to the Crystal Core Radio Podcast. My name is Brian, and joining me, we have a roundtable to talk Endwalker. Yes, that's going to be spoilers. So note that if you have not finished Endwalker, we'd love for you to come back and check out this episode in the future. You can also subscribe to the audio version of the podcast wherever audio version podcasts are found. But today we're joined by Rory Khan, Night Sky Prince, Chris, aka Gaming Kinda, and I, Ginger Prime, talking about this incredible expansion, this incredible journey, and one that I think we have a lot of really different perspectives here. And I think this is going to be a really interesting way of how we've all approached the latest story of Endwalker, especially like to call out Night Sky Prince. If you guys aren't following him, big Final Fantasy guy, Final Fantasy XIV, kind of the first real, like he held off. Actually, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Knight, and then we'll just go around the horn and talk to people what actually finally got you into 14 in the first place.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Night Sky Prince, and I have a YouTube channel and Twitch channel where pretty much all we do is Final Fantasy stuff, single player and Final Fantasy 14. And so Final Fantasy 14, like my journey with it is kind of like a weird one in a way, because I actually played 1.0 back in the day. When it came out, got my legacy tattoo on the back of my character. I quit playing 1.0 for relatively obvious reasons. And then when A Realm Reborn came out, I got back into the game for a while, and then my grades started like plummeting at the time. So I had to put A Realm Reborn down. And then for years I kind of put it off, right? Because I was just like, yeah, I played A Realm Reborn, story didn't hook me, gameplay was fun, but I can't afford to be like hooked on MMOs. And then so I ended up revisiting it maybe like late 2019, like going into 2020. That's when like Shadowbringers hype was like peak, right? And so everyone's like, oh my God, dude, you gotta play this game. Best Final Fantasy story ever. And I was like, really? Because I pretty much at this point, actually, I played 1 through 15. So I've touched at some point every single mainline title. So I was like, really? Best Final Fantasy story. And now here I am having completed Endwalker. And yet again, I 1000% agree. Probably the best Final Fantasy story that I've been through out of all of them.
That's fantastic. Rory, now your journey with Final Fantasy is one that's started a while back, but you really blew up from Monster Hunter, and now you're also covering Final Fantasy, which is great because I kind of live vicariously through your Monster Hunter ways. And then also I get to see your amazing reactions to Final Fantasy things that are happening over on your channel. Why don't you give everybody a little synopsis of who you are in case they don't know you?
So I do a lot of Monster Hunter content. I actually started by doing Dark Souls content because the idea for me has always been to tell people, look, this is not as hard as everybody makes you believe that it is. And I present the game in a way that people can kind of like, oh, they can try it out. And eventually they're like, oh, this is actually pretty easy. And I did that for Dark Souls. I did that for Monster Hunter. And I've been trying to do that now for 14 as well, because the idea for people of actually getting into an MMO is extremely daunting. And the reason I got into 14 was because after BFA, I was basically telling everyone, that's it, guys. I'm never going to play MMOs again. I quit on this whole genre because World of Warcraft has soiled me so much that I don't even want to play this genre anymore. And people tell me, no, listen, you got to give one last chance to this one game. And I'm like, I already played it in 2013. And I played it like WoW, which was a mistake, grabbing all the quests and, trying to mass complete quests. They were like, no, just do the story. I was like, okay, fine. And then basically I became completely addicted to 14 as well.
And Rory's representing Paladin Love. Rory and Chris, Paladin versus Warrior, have a friendly little competition. Right now I think Chris is inadvertently pulled ahead in interesting ways. Gaming Kinda, aka Chris, man. You started story in Shadowbringers. I think that's a kind of a really interesting aspect. I saw today, and we don't need to get into it too much because it could derail the whole show, but people apparently bullying and being really crappy to preach because he finished Shadowbringers and he says, I really don't like it. And that is like obviously a bad thing within the some parts of the sub communities in 14. And yet, when we've talked about it, a lot of people have always tried to discount you because you're a story skipper. WoW trained you. Like what is the story in an MMO? That's ridiculous. 14's like, hold my beer.
It's flavor, right? It's when I ask, why are we killing this boss? It's the answer to that question, nothing more. And the answer is always they're bad. Like the answer is always they're bad. They're bad. They're bad. They're doing something bad. They're bad to people. It's always something like that. Tip of the hat to whoever supported Rory. And
Yeah.
so I think that's like I came in to play it like WoW, and what WoW offers to me over other video games, I do play a lot of other games, is the chance to be in a truly multiplayer space where I can come check out your gear and we can run dungeons together. I can run dungeons with complete strangers with relative ease. And so that's really why I play MMOs. And like A Realm Reborn had enough of that for me. I enjoyed that. So people are like, how could you enjoy this game without story? Because the rest of the team is also incredibly talented. The people who build the world, the people who put in chocobo races, the people who give us dungeons raids, alliance raids. There is so much to do. When you look at thousands of hours, the story's really, it's these hundreds. And yeah, it's the little oasis at the top of the mountain that like creates the stream that nourishes the whole valley. But like, if you ignore it, the rest of the mountain is still there. And so I appreciate that it's driven so much for the community and the dev team, but I enjoyed A Realm Reborn, Heavensward, Stormblood all entirely without really know what was going on. I had a blast. But then in Shadowbringers, Yoshi P said, hey, I know many of you skip. I know many of you bought skips. I know many of you have been overwhelmed. You've come in late or you've been here a long time and you feel like you can't catch up. We wrote Shadowbringers, not just for people who are in on the story. Obviously, they're going to have a blast, but as an on-ramp for you guys. So if I could ask something of story skippers, would you give Shadowbringers a shot? And like, after loving this game so much, it's like, yeah, that's fine. Like, that's a fair ask. You know, it's been several expansions. You think you've gotten better. And I adored Shadowbringers. I adored Shadowbringers. And so that's what got me there. And then kind of like watching the Star Wars movies out of order, I have the advantage of going back and I did A Realm Reborn after Shadowbringers for the first time. And so like I met Y'shtola for the first time after Shadowbringers, but I got to go back and meet her for the first time in the, you know, whatever time is happening there. And so like there are these moments throughout that where I think I started my ARR like 5.3, something like that. And so like we had just learned some crazy stuff about like all this stuff that was about to happen. And then I go back and like, I'm in Lenosha and they're like, yeah, we're really having some issues with the Sahagin. And I'm like, are you? And so even like side quests felt really important because, you know, Merle Wibb in early ARR, like that whole, everything surrounding Limsa was like, hey, we're just kind of setting up the space. But then like knowing everything, you know, post Shadowbringers, like, no, you're not. This is, getting to see those seeds planted, knowing what they became was really neat. And I look forward to going back and experiencing Heavensward and Stormblood.
Oh man, I'm excited for you when you experience Heavensward. So Nice Guy, you said that Endwalker solidifies Final Fantasy XIV as the best Final Fantasy story. Is that because of the whole story? Is that because of any particular expansion? Will there be like 2 or 3 key identifiable moments that you feel set this game apart from other Final Fantasies in the series?
Well, Endwalker is like very much like a culmination of everything that's happened so far, right? And so I don't think that like it's like Endwalker itself, like in an isolation, being what necessarily makes Final Fantasy XIV the best story. But I think when you add Endwalker there as a conclusion to that Hydaelyn Zodiarch saga is where it pushes it over the edge for me. And really what it was, I guess, about Endwalker that did that for me is how they handled like a lot of the themes in there, like this sort of excellent existentialist themes, right? Like they kind of took the word end like very literally in some ways, and they assessed and looked at the word like end, like the end of one's life, the end of society, the end of the world. And they approached that from every angle that they possibly could. And to be honest with you, Brian, I cried twice. 500 people in stream watching me play this game. I cried.
Do you normally not cry?
I normally don't cry. Like I'm a type of person where I'm watching like, I don't know, some film with like my girlfriend and she'll be like in tears and I'll just sit there and I'll be like, wow, that was really sad. But I'm not like crying, right? I'm talking about I played Endwalker and I'm talking my streams of tears in my face. I'm trying to like hold it back and I'm like I'm like breaking down like on stream. And it was at that moment that you know, I had to think back and I'm like, when's the last time like any Final Fantasy games made me feel like this? Like Aerith's death and like 7 maybe was like the last time. Like I was a little kid playing, and I thought even then was like, she's
we
gonna
can find her.
back.
We can get her back. We can get her back.
Yeah, we can get her back. Right, she'll come back at the end.
I
of the
still, for some reason, hold out hope.
Yeah,
Like they have a remake. I don't know.
Right?
Like maybe I'll be able to do this. I haven't played the remake yet, but yeah.
Yeah, and so there were just moments in Endwalker where I just felt like they were like talking to me specifically about like my own life struggles, right? Like a lot of the dialogue almost feels personal, right?
Yeah.
Like Natsuko Ishikawa maybe was sitting there writing that message for you specifically.
How
I
many
don't know
times,
if you guys had those.
They looked at the
moments,
camera. Are you having fun? Like, I don't know. Maybe you should take a break right now.
Yeah,
What's
there was a
happening?
lot of like, why don't you take a nap?
Yeah. And I really like that too. Like I understand like if maybe some people like felt maybe that was like too on the nose or too direct, but I almost felt like it was a very like humanist way to like approach a story.
Chris, what was my cry counter like final count?
30.
30? Okay.
Even 30. But that ranged from everything from like he laughed hard enough that he did this, or like a single tear, to like stream needs to end. Like there's just sobbing and then he just leaves and he's just gone. And so like and that counts as one. And so some of those were like pretty world shaking, where I think you needed some time.
Like I mean, just to say, like the Thavnir with the baby, and also with the Zeus, like what was like really a lifesaver for me was I was just torn up, and my son came upstairs and he's like, "Hey, Dad, you want to play trains?" And I go, "Yeah, that's exactly what I need right now. I need some train time with my 3-year-old. Like that's exactly where I need to be right now. I'm going to I need to take a break." And that actually was very helpful because like I did it one quest after the suicide, and I was just like I was done. And it was like he's like, "Hey, let's go play." It's like absolutely. Like
I think I came back mad because the place I escape to when something awful happens are
games,
MMOs. And so since 14's my really active MMO right now, I just wanted to play 14. And so like I walked away and then I came back and I think I just silently played through the next section. Like I'm just going to play 14. Screw these guys. Like I was just like, I was torn up. I went away. I came back and I just played. Like, it's like, no, we're not going to read the quests out loud. We're just going to play Final Fantasy.
Now, Rory, you got kids. And so I'm kind of curious. Did you have a cry counter? Did you tear up? Did anything from the story as a parent really hit hard?
I didn't actually get to stream it because I made a terrible mistake. So what I decided to do was I wanted to do a recap of the entirety of the story of Final Fantasy XIV up until Endwalker. And so I found this website by this guy called Vicarion, who had typed out like a summary of everything. And it was massive. And I was like, I did calculations and estimations. I was like, it's going to take me about 6 to 8 hours to read this whole thing out loud. And I made the brilliant decision of trying to do that one day before Endwalker. Okay. You see where this is going.
Yeah.
So for starters, I've completely underestimated the amount of, I mean, I knew that it's hard to read, and particularly for me, because I'm reading in a foreign language, because obviously I'm Portuguese, I'm not English. And it's like I'm reading this in a foreign language and it puts more effort into my throat. And it's like, I think 5 hours and change into this, not only my throat was completely shot, I had chest pains because you're reading out this massive text and you're trying to control your breathing. And that eventually goes up to your chest, depending on your level of practice. And because, again, it's not natural for me to speak in English. It's like something that I have to put a little bit of strain into. That completely destroyed me. And I was super sad. I even made like 2 videos talking about how I even thought like, I think I'm just getting too old and I can't even stream for as long as I usually do. Like I literally broke down. I was like, crap. And I just did not stream the game at all. I just played it all by myself. Which in a way, it was actually really cool because I basically got to experience it without having the added stress of the stream on top of it, which made it a very special experience in its own way. And I cried. I don't know how many times I've cried, but I've cried plenty of times throughout the story, particularly near the final zone. I mean, not particularly in the final zone. That was like where it killed like the second ghost when eventually we get to talking about that. Just the second ghost, the second he spoke, I was like,
I was really hopeful they would use more of the portrait technology. That portrait technology that they use, like when it's Thancred, where he shows his face. They talk about
this is Thancred,
and I was really hopeful they would do more of that because, like, I think for a lot of people, there's they have feelings for characters, but they don't immediately recognize a voice actor that it's been months or years since they've heard some of these things, and so like I think that that would have been a really great time to have like at least that portrait thing be an optional UI configuration.
Oh yeah.
What can I ask like which part like made you guys like cry the hardest?
Oh man.
The part that made me, I mean, for me, I think it was I think it might have actually been that one. I mean, I don't know. It's a toss-up between when Graha sacrificed himself, and because I really like Graha, and the second ghost, which is Orchi. It's like just it's a toss-up. Those just like instantly, like it wasn't even like, oh man, it was like just like instant tears streaming down. It's like, fuck, they got me.
Chris, did you cry?
Yeah. I mean, the suicide definitely messed with me. I think that some of the stuff between like the twins and their dad, but like I think it's like Night Sky Prince, they hit a lot of like the really classical human struggles and they hit them really deeply. And so while they may not have hit one in the exact way it's affected you, or maybe it's never affected you, so it just felt like a gameplay at some point because they hit so many of the classical struggles of just being a human. There are points where it feels like the game is talking to you directly. And then because of so much of the phrasing, the take a nap and talking directly to the player, the fourth wall breaking stuff, I think where it really struggled was I thought about and talked about on stream stuff that like I haven't thought about and talked about in years, where it just kind of takes you back through all of these past things, which adds a layer because it's not just the finale of Final Fantasy. It's the finale of the last 8 years. It's a reminder of everything that got you up to the 8 years, every game you've played before, every life experience you've had. So I think for me, it was any time that it kind of broke that wall. So things like the suicide, having been affected by suicide and those around me and in my family. And then like, I don't have a relationship with my biological father, mostly because he's a dick. And so, like, I think, having that relationship there, and then there were aspects of it where it was very fatherly. And like, there is a man that my mom married that I call dad. And I didn't call dad for probably the first 10 years he was in my life. And at some point I realized like, no, he is my dad. And so like, I think there was a lot of emotion going through that I struggled with. I will say, Night Sky Prince, I didn't cry from probably 15 years old until the day of my wedding. And when I got married in my 20s, late 20s, I now cry at every wedding. I now cry at every Disney movie. So like, just know that if the faucet ever turns on for you, be prepared that it might just be on now. I was standing I was the guy who was my best man. He like stood next to me. He's like, I'm so happy for you. And then he got married last year and I'm standing at his wedding and like, I'm just dying. Like it's just like my whole face is just soaked as I stand next to him. I'm just losing it. And I look out and like his mom's keeping it together. His grandma's like everybody's fine. And I just am losing it. So
for me, that's great. That's like therapeutic. Really. That's like that release, man.
I gotta admit to something. And that is that unlike you guys, I was not sympathetic to Quintus at all. When he committed suicide, I went in there and I took a screenshot of my character with a big old thumbs up. Like, let me tell you something. When he took the twins away from me, I would have butchered every single Garlean in that place if the game had given me the choice. I'm not even kidding. Like, the game had given me the choice. Hey, this will have severe consequences in the story and whatever will change your playthrough forever. But you can butcher every person in here. I'd be like, I'll do it. You give me my goddamn twins. Don't you dare take them away. I will murder every person in here and every person in this whole goddamn zone if you try to take these two twins away from me. That was my thought process in there. So when he shot himself, I was like, screw him. I hate him. I was pissed off, dude. I was just like, dude, I will kill everyone in here.
I was hurt by that, like, because I think, you know, one of the things that I always like Stephen Colbert said, is that the tragedy and things like these events, like loss, makes us more human because it makes us relatable. And it's like Chris and I talked about, it's like I shared the story of when my uncle tried to, you know, commit suicide unsuccessfully, and it's like that's a real fact. People have to deal with that, and it really caught me off guard. And like the hope is that, you know, that didn't have to happen. And obviously it's not a real character. But I think especially as I've gotten older and have had kids, like the things have definitely impacted me differently. One of the reasons why I specifically wanted to stream this is I was playing Dragon Quest XI, and I love that game, and I was playing it and I was just weeping. My wife looks at me, she's like, you should really stream that. Like that's that's a really real reaction to this part of the story. And it's like, okay, I want to make sure that just for my own sake that I have these moments, because when Chris says 8 years, like it's been 13 years. Like the Final Fantasy XIV has different starting timelines for wherever people kind of came in, and it's tracked it twice. Like where was 1.0, and then when did everything kind of start with 2.0? But for me, 13 years was that. And I actually opened up like every stream with kind of my thoughts on the gravity of 13 years. And so the suicide hit me pretty hard, because like that's something that like I can relate to you know, personally. Then I think essentially obviously the Thavnir and the baby and the parents trying to save the kid in despair with the final days, like that was really powerful. In fact, it's like after that quest, it's like I got to take a break. And so I walked downstairs and I hugged and played with the kids for a little bit, left stream up because I was like, I still want to keep playing, but man, that was crazy. The biggest part, like I didn't get too teary over the whole, like, you know, the acid, like the Scions sacrificing themselves, because it just didn't feel like it was a sacrifice. It didn't feel like they're like the payments coming due. They all are unmade, and then we bring them back to the power of creation. It's like
what would your emotion have been if they didn't come back?
I would have appreciated it, actually.
Their loss.
I think. Well, the thing is that did they not come back, or is there 6-1? So like the video gaming part of it always just wonders, like, is that really their end? Right? I don't know. And then like with Aerith, like yes, like that's the fact that really didn't even impact me until the credits rolled. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, is that really the real thing? Like, that's where I think I would have appreciated that personally more, so to speak. But that being said, that would be my only kind of like, I don't even know if I would change it, but just the fact that it's like, that didn't feel gravity. The gravity was the walk with the twins. Like at that point in the game, leading up to Endsinger, leading up to the kind of the final confrontation, the gravity of 13 years of covering this game, playing this game, evangelizing this game, you know, really was sitting on me to the point where I was like, guys, I can't even look at chat right now. Like I am just barely moving my character forward as the music plays, you know, and that whole moment. And I think that was actually more significant than any of the being unmade. So those would be my kind of big 3 moments of Endwalker, just like really just you know, subverting my expectations, but really making me like a mess, like just legitimately like, okay, like don't look at that as a resume. You know, it's like, you know, if everybody's ever like, if I ever decide to go back into like a work office environment, it's like, maybe don't look at those guys. Like, you know, I don't know.
The thing for me in that final zone was, and because I've seen that comment from a lot of people where they say, of course they're not going to die, they're going to come back. But to me, the important thing is when you're as immersed into the game as you can get with 14, I feel like, particularly because you can relate with the characters as much as we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I was thinking was I wasn't seeing it from whether or not they can come back. I'm seeing it from the point of the characters themselves. They don't know if they're going to come back. They don't know if you're going to succeed. Like we know we're going to win, and you know, whatever trial we're going to face. The characters themselves don't. They're willingly giving their lives away from the first moment. Because like Thancred doesn't even get the screen time, but I got emotional over it because they specifically say the last thing he said was survive, and he created this space so that you wouldn't die. And then when Estinian sacrificed himself, then I was like, holy shit, we're going to lose one of them at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I felt it because of the fact that if you look at it from the characters' perspectives, they don't know if they're going to be back. They're willing to put it all on the line so that you can move forward, whether or not, they get to come back. Specifically, Y'shtola tells you, do not summon us back, because otherwise you can't keep going forward. You have to keep going forward.
Right.
And Graha being a very special character for me, I was like, holy fuck, that just murdered me. Like, even just talking about it, you can hear in my voice kind of cracking up. And even whenever I see it like in highlights and shit, I still get emotional over it.
And for me, it wasn't even necessarily about like, I didn't cry there, but it was a pretty emotional point for me. But like, for me, it wasn't necessarily about like, oh, we just lost the Scions, because I didn't believe it for a second, if I'm honest. But for me, it was really about how those scenes represented the development of those characters, especially Estinian. Like the dynamic they had for Estinian was so good. Really showed his growth. Actually, all of Endwalker, really, Estinian's like growth is like so apparent throughout the whole journey. But really, I think what those scenes in Ultima Thule like represented to me was about the bonds that both the player has formed with the Scions and that the Scions have formed with each other, right? And sort of exemplifying that through the fact of saying, like, straight up, I would die for you and you would die for me. Like, that's the type of relationship that we have. And I think that displaying that they would sacrifice themselves for each other was the real big picture of the scene, in a way that that's how strong their bonds are, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
From a boss's perspective, let's talk about the fact we talked about Zodiarch and Hydaelyn being the trials, and then Endsinger being the last, and then you have the fist the cuffs with Zenos. Let's start with Zenos, and then I want to get your thoughts on Zodiarch and Hydaelyn on themselves. Like,
can I just say something real quick, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
I got spoiled for Zodiarch on your stream.
So sorry.
No, it's like, because you got spoiled too. Because I'm not sure if you remember you specific.
I was like, somebody's like, I can't believe it. And I was like, I think they're joking, but I will just block it.
I instantly clicked off your stream. I was like, God damn it, I can't believe someone would say, why would you say that? I was so mad, dude. And then when the moment that I was on the moon, I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen now, because, the other guy was right. And it's like, oh, damn it, why would you do that? And it's like,
some people suck, man. It's like, so like, that's where I was like, I went to member chat.
Yeah, I didn't even want it to talk to you about it, because I was like, if I tell him anything, he's going to know that it's wrong. So I can't even say anything.
Yeah, I was like, all right, whatever. Like, I'm just going to not believe it. And then, like, when it happened, I was like, this is great. And then, the back in my mind, I was like, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like, okay, like that's some people suck, and that's been a part of like avoiding the internet.
Endwalker's story is the first and only time that I can think of issuing a perma ban on our channel. And it was for that. So like, they're contributing members of our community. They said thank you. Some had sub badges, but I said over and over, it's zero tolerance. So when somebody came in and told me, how do you feel about Thancred dying? You're done. You're done. That's it. Like, you're done. That's it. Like, because what am I supposed to do? Say, oh, you can come back after the story and what? Spoil 6.1 for me? Like, no, you're done. Like, you clearly think that that's entertainment. And like, I've said over and over, like, I just want to experience this. I want to experience this. And I know that this is so emotional that I don't know if any of you live somewhere that does a lot of like Christmas lights, but when you go out and you go look at a lot of people's Christmas lights, and then you come home and you don't have Christmas lights, it kind of feels like you took something and you didn't give something back. And so when you go through something this emotional, one of the ways I get through it is I went and watched a lot of people's streams get through parts that I had already been through. Watch them go through Thavnair, watch them go through Garlemald, watch them in Ultima Thule. I watched, I know I caught some of Night Sky Princess streams. And so like, I watched literally all of Brian's MSQ playthrough. And so like, that was this really cathartic experience to go back through in moments that like, I just remember having all this pain in my chest. Like, I could laugh because like, I already knew what was going to happen. I could have a good time. And it was really therapeutic to go back through it multiple times and see it and catch things I missed and view it less like on the edge of my seat. And so it felt selfish as a full-time content creator to not share my experience when I want to consume other people's. And all we ask for in trade is don't spoil it. Like, it's not, don't ask for money. Don't ask for you to watch it. You don't have to be here. If I stream to an empty room, that's okay. Like, literally all we ask in trade for VODing an entire 60-hour experience is not to spoil it. So that made me really mad when people would come in and do that stuff.
I had a great experience, actually. My mods, like, shout out to my mods like Pichitima, Seo, Yoshi, if you guys are watching this, like, big shout out to you guys, because you guys were crazy. I'm talking about, like, I would just be playing, I'd see like chat messages pop up in my peripheral vision, and then I'd look over and I would see like 6 messages have been deleted. And I'd be like, yo, what did they even do? What did they say? I don't know, but it was all gone before I could see any of it. So
Yeeted and deleted.
yes,
Yeeted and deleted.
yeah. So
Yeah.
a shout out to my SWAT team who took down anybody who would even dare like spoil anything of the game for me.
What a
So I really
service.
appreciate
Now,
them.
Will says Ultima Thule had the best music. It was great. And then I would counter that with Count Chocula, like from the Raid series. Oh my gosh, I just did that last night. And I cranked that music up. Oh my gosh. I would say Ultima Thule did until I fought Count, Chocula. And I was like, oh, heck yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Endwalker had like great sound direction, but obviously so can. So
Like
of
3/4 of it is remixes, beautiful remixes on like answers. And so since answers is on that like no fly list for like being used in YouTube videos and stuff, all I can picture is you've just created a 2-year problem. Like you created a whole problem of like, now how do we, but it goes for sale February. So we're just going to shout something out. We are filming this towards the end of January, and that soundtrack goes for sale. What do they name all of these tracks? Is it Answers 1, Answers 2, Answers 3? I know the Venat one has like your answer, but like are they all just variations on that? They're each beautiful, so I want them all. So how do you name them?
I don't know.
I'm sure they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna come up with different names for it, and I don't think it's gonna be just like remix 1 or 2 or whatever. I don't think it's gonna be that either.
Yeah.
Now back to the Zenos fight. What did you guys think of that? Like, was that cathartic? Was that fun? What do you think?
I have some pretty strong takes on it, right? So I absolutely love it. And I understand that a lot of people do not. But I think that the people who don't miss the point of it, right? So with going back to Endwalker being a raising existentialist questions, right? Existentialism being like the entire theme of Endwalker, right? Zenos, one represents our mirror, right? Like wanting to do challenging fights and such for fun, and that's why why do we play the game, right? He's a mirror for like the warrior of light and the player itself. But deeper than that, what Zenos actually represents here is hedonism, right? He's doing this for his pleasure. Like that's his answer to, what is the meaning of life and why do we do all this, even though life is suffering followed by our inevitable demise, right? And Zenos' answer to that is that I do this because I like doing it. It brings me pleasure. That's the meaning of life to me, right? And so the final fight with Zenos may feel pointless, but it should feel pointless. It doesn't have a point. He's doing it because it brings him pleasure, because it's a great sensation for him, because that's what makes him happy and feel fulfilled, right? And that's actually the point of it, right? Is that you have like, after you've kind of defeated nihilism, right? After you've defeated like all these other philosophical takes on what it means to be alive, and you just have your take and Zenos's take at the end, right? This sort of indulgence that Zenos can like really represent. And at the end of that, it sort of represents you kind of winning, right? But also the fact that, that aspect of Zenos is also within you, that you also,
Yeah, it's kind of recognizing your counterpart. Right. What do you think?
So for me, it's like, I felt like Zenos represents the raider desire in me, which I've always been a raider back in World of Warcraft. And even though I hadn't done Savage until Endwalker is actually when I started doing Savage, I always have that what's the word for it? That ambition to do more, to do the more challenging content, stuff like that. I've always had that. So I understood the parallel that they were drawing for. It's like, okay, this is supposed to represent the whole thing, but to stay in character, because you do get that vibe that at that point of the fight, the developers are talking to you, not your characters. Like, you want this. And I'm like, you're goddamn right I do, but I'm still playing my character. And I went and I chose I don't know, there was one of the options that's like, this ends now, Zeno. So I role played my choice of the thing, because like the first choice is like, yes, I want this. But I was like, that's too out of character for the character that I'm playing. But yes, I do want this. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's go, Zenos. Let's do one final round. And I thought it was cool that Zenos showed up at the end, friggin' Shinryu form. Let's go. I'm going to help you. But then at the end of the day, he was just like a platform. I was actually hoping for him to do something, to actually help. But it's like, no, I'm a platform. You can stand on me so that you can go kill the big bad. You know, I was like, all right, sure.
Yeah, so that we can actually finally fight. You know, it's like, I'm going to help you so we can have our duel.
And then there's an interesting theories, which I'm not sure if this is confirmed or not, because to me, it doesn't make that much of a difference, that like the final teleporter that shows up that enables you to escape, there's people saying that Zenos willed it into existence as like his final wish before he died or something, because at the end of the day, he cared about you. And so people are saying that through the last amount of ether that he had from gorging on the mother crystal, that he used it to summon the transporter so that you could get away and survive. I think that's a really cool theory. I don't know if that's the intention or not. Some people are saying, oh, it's the one that fell. I thought it was the one that, you know, you throw it off and then eventually it falls down into that realm of nothingness that you were in. I don't know. But the idea that Zenos saves us at the end, I thought that that was a really interesting thing. And I don't know if that's the intention or not.
I like that. I like that idea.
I thought he would get a trial fight. I thought he would either get a trial fight during 6.0 or after 6.0. He would be one of the things that carried on, and we would resolve him as part of the transition into 7.0. I thought he would get a trial fight. And for him to want our attention, the respect that we give to other trial fights, right? The respect we give to primals, the respect we give to other bosses where we build up and we have this big encounter with all of this emotion on either side. And like, especially if we're talking to the player, a player remembers trial fights. We don't necessarily remember scenarios as well. Like the trial fights, these are the moments. The trials, in my opinion, are always the most impactful. They mean more to me narratively than the raids, than the dungeons. Like, it's building to the trials. Those are the moments, right? The 5.0, the music change going into the last trial. And for him to not get one feels so poetic that like, that's all he wanted. And then for so many people to be like, I hate him. Then there is no better vengeance for us to go, fine, I'll fight you. But like after the trial fight, like you're not the trial fight. Like it just feels like
that is interesting.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I'm not even going to bring other adventurers in on this.
It has a little bit of a Marvel spin, because if you look back to the gameplay launch trailers and all that, it looked like we were going to have a trial fight with Zenos, you know, like they had that whole stage, and then it's like, no, you don't even get that. And actually,
you don't deserve it.
I agree. He didn't deserve it. I was so annoyed by him that I think that was the actual best outcome for me in his relationship, because it's like, if all of a sudden it's like, and now I'm the big bad, I've joined with Meteion and blah, 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 blah. I'll be like, oh, like, you're so annoying. Like, you're so annoying. Just go away, please. And then, and it's like, okay, cool. And I like how they had to animate that scene differently based off your race. So if you're a Lala versus like because of the height differential and things of that nature, I thought that was like, that's a really nice touch.
Because they could have given him depth if they wanted to. Fan Daniel, in my opinion, had no depth coming into Endwalker, and by the end I was like, yes, this is amazing.
Yeah. No, I really like what Zenos represents. I understand that how if people like look at him on like a surface level, they'll just be like, I didn't like it. And I also think that like ending it like with an instance too was just such like a ballsy move to do, because it's just like, man, like this is like so unorthodox for what this game is. But you know, he wanted a 1v1, and I think if it was like a trial fight, that wouldn't like really satisfy that desire.
Right.
For people that want to respect that fight, that would be the best scenario in the game, alongside the 5-3 scenario, to come back and create an extreme version of the single player scenario.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about Zodiarch?
Boy.
It's like, to me, I got there was a hint of disappointment there for me because like, well, I mean, Zodiarch has been the big one of our big goals this whole time, and it's like then we end up fighting like an incomplete version of him, and it's like, oh, okay.
Well,
I
he was
wanted to
under.
fight like
He
the
was-
real deal, like the fully powered Zodiarch and all of that. Like that's what I expected. I expected Zodiarch to be like the final trial, right? I think
Mhm.
I'm not sure if most people expect that. I definitely expect Zodiarch's going to be the last baddie, right? We're going to fight him at the end. And the fact that it was the first trial, it was definitely like subverting expectations 1,000%. I was like, oh, okay, and he's incomplete and all of these other things. From a fight standpoint, I also thought that he was very interesting, particularly the extreme version, because I've had to do it quite a few times. But yeah, interesting.
Zodiarch Hydaelyn Ultimate would let you do that. We could go make that an ultimate.
Yeah,
That'd be good. I loved the fact that Zodiarch was the first trial. That I thought that was a brilliant use of subversion because it was like the last thing that anyone would suspect going into this, right? Because everyone, I mean, we all kind of had theories on who the final boss would be, everyone being dead wrong, obviously. But Zodiarch was definitely like on the top list for like what everyone thought they'd be fighting at the end. And the fact
it was
that he
Anima.
basically, yeah.
Yeah, Anima being a dungeon boss. I was like,
Yeah.
what?
That kind of was like somewhat disappointing too, because Anima, like I feel like that should have been a trial.
Lunar Bahamut should have been a trial.
Yeah,
Like,
that also should have been a trial, but
It'll just fall over. You can even take Vuln stacks. It'll still go down.
and I was just I could not believe it. I was in such a state of disbelief to know that, and because at the first like half Endwalker, I guess, or third, I guess, of Endwalker that leads up to that point, I was kind of like, yeah, I got a good idea of where this is going. And then you get to that first trial, and I'm like, I have no idea where this is going in a good way, right? Because it's like, yo, the story can only surprise me from here because I have absolutely like no idea where they're gonna take things from here.
For me, the credits could have rolled after the first trial. Like emotionally, I felt like I'd gotten a whole expansion. So everything after that felt like bonus content. And there's a lot after that. So like everything up to Zodiarch answered so much. And then we got to kill Zodiarch. And I'm like, cool, that's an expansion. And then they're like, great, you're level 83. It's like, oh no.
All right.
I really felt like the length of Endwalker, right? Because I know Yoshida had talked about, oh, you know, it's like 30 to 50% larger than like a normal like expansions, like cutscene wise, right? But like looking back on it, it was long. It really did live up to that.
It was meaty. It was
Do you
meaty.
guys like the
I was,
technology?
Yes. Actually, I really like it.
If they had not brought it up, I think I would have been delighted at how much deeper it was than what we've had in the past. But for them to bring it up as a feature, I expected them to be able to get onto multi-person mounts because that's what they hinted at. I expected them to be able to take Aetherites, especially when they say Rod's at Han's a maze, and you're like, cool. So you got some Aetherites unlocked? Great. Graha's going to follow you around while you try to figure it out.
All right.
I had to take mount off my bar for the duration of MSQ because of the number of times I mounted.
Yeah, you just mount up. I did that so many times.
It had to go off the bar. I just walked places.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually disappointed with the whole because like I played most of well, not most, but like let's say the first half of Endwalker, just riding the regalia around, waiting for someone to pop it, because he specifically mentions in one of the live letters, oh, and by the way, your science can show up and around you and in your mount. I think he actually even says in your mounts, and I was like, wait, what?
He said
it never happened. It never happened. I was like, I'm like halfway through Endwalker, and I'm like asking my FC, by the way, guys, has anybody ever showed up in your multi-seater mount? They're like, no, I finished the game. As nobody showed up yet. And I was like, I've been riding the regalia everywhere for no reason.
Now Aiden asks, how do you guys feel about the fight with Venat? And that would lead us into our Hydaelyn as well. So like, what did you guys think about that whole like kind of this little scenario fight?
Venat's fight? I thought it was it was cool because the fact that basically she was the previous Azem or whatever. And I was like, oh, so we're fighting almost like in a way we're fighting ourselves, kind of. Like that's an interesting thing to go through. I thought that was a neat aspect of it. And also I was a paladin and she was using paladin skills. So it made sense to me. I'm not sure if she uses paladin skills for all the classes because she plays sword and shield, right? For all or yeah. Okay, so it's just a thing, but for me it was like, oh, this is cool because it's actually me. She's a paladin as well. That's really cool. But
We're
yeah,
not
I like
Venat, right? We're the following Azem's
Correct.
soul.
Yeah, we're correct. Yeah, correct. So she stepped down from Azem, and then we got
So she's
appointed.
She's our
predecessor. But she chose not to go and into the live stream. So that's essentially like whenever you decide that you're done with whatever your position, that you have the choice to be like, I can either just go ahead and retire like into the live stream, or I'm going to just go do whatever, but I'm not going to be doing that anymore.
It might just be that for the sake of like writing confusion, because they have to deal with translation and localization, but it does feel like souls seem to maintain a gender, because you'll notice that Azem is assigned your character's gender. And so watching Brian's always messed with me because they kept saying he, and I play as a female character, so it's she. So Azem inherits your gender, which means that if we ever meet Azem, it'll be masked, right? Or something like that, because or else it'll have to be our character. Like, how else do they deal with that? And how could it be our character? Because did all these races even exist back in the Unsundered times? Like, there's some weird stuff with Unsundering.
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever show it for that reason.
Right. I think it's just easier not to. It's like, all right, it's just that mystery. But it's interesting. Hager is Zem's familiar. I personally thought the fight was a lot of fun. It was really fun going toe to toe, and it foreshadows Hydaelyn, you know, and it's like, oh wow, and then we get to go, and she saved this last bit of energy after being like, you see her handling the weight of all the sundering, all the rejoinings, and just that fight and that battle, and to kind of prove ourselves. That blew my mind. Like, I was like, once, you know, she came down and it was like that gorgeous artwork, right? Like, it was like with Zodiarch and Hydaelyn from that box art. Like, it's like, wow, they really took that art and put it contextually into a character model in the game, and it was just so beautiful. And man, that I did it with Trust. That was at first it got wrecked.
That's what I was about to ask. Did you all do it with Trust your first time?
Yes,
I did it, and that's the only time I've ever done that, because typically people are like, oh, you got to do this dungeon with Trust. Oh, you got to do this with Trust. It's like, no, like, I'm not here to do it with Trust. I did Trust. I know how the system works. I don't use the system. And then it's like, oh wait, like, so I did the first time there was a Trust 4-man dungeon. I did that the first time for Shadowbringers. I was like, great. And then same thing, first time Trust system 8-man trial, I did that, and I was like, that was great. I got wrecked, and so then I brought in friends, and I still got wrecked, but it was so much fun.
Oh no, I actually finished it with. I think I wiped like 3 or 4 times, but I finished it with the trials, with the Trusts, because I've always thought that there should be more things that you could do with the Trust. I understand that it is an MMO, you're supposed to go in with friends and all that, and it makes more sense to have more duties where you do it with friends. But there are just some moments, like particularly that one, when you're there. And I actually did the previous dungeon that takes you down there with them as well, with the Trusts. So it just made sense. Like, they're all here. It makes sense that they would be the ones participating in the trial. And the fact that you do get to experience that moment with them, I thought it was really, really cool.
Yeah. I love that moment. Like, of course, like who's not gonna choose to like have like Emmett Silk be a party member? Like, nah, I don't like who's really gonna do that, right? So that was fantastic. Venat and Hydaelyn. So like I said, I cried like 2 times during like playing this game, where I just big balled. And one of those times actually was when Hydaelyn dies, right? Like at one of the final trials before, what is that, like level, I can't remember when you fight Hydaelyn, but when you do finally fight Hydaelyn and she dies, that was like when I really cried. And there's a lot of reasons I did, but I think one of the big reasons is that we kind of go into Endwalker with this distrust of her. Like, you know, like Shadowbringers really broke that trust with her. It severed that sort of connection. And so like when I went into the expansion, I was like, I don't trust you at all. And then when you get to see her side of the story, you know, because, you know, we've been holding on to that for like, you know, a year or 2 after beating Shadowbringers. It's like, I just don't trust her. And then to really know her side of the story and how things actually happen, you almost feel like this sense of guilt when you finally, you know, well, you don't like really kill her. She was kind of like dying anyways, but you get the point there.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chris?
Really? I love that this found a way to be respectful of time. So many times when you start to introduce time travel, it just starts to be either an answer to all things, kind of like the Echo is a little bit laughable when like Yoshi P like at a panel somebody was like, how do we see ground effects? And like the Echo, how do we understand, like how do we get like the needed flashbacks? The Echo, like how do we understand people's language? The Echo, like it just like Echo is just the answer to all things. And so sometimes the Echo can feel a little bit like, oh, that's just game speak for I don't know. But with time travel, like it made a lot of sense. And so the fact that we could go back and kind of fulfill the future by seeing the past, and then for her, 12,000 years had passed. And for us, depending on whether or not you guys took a break, it'd been like 2 hours. And so, you've done all this. I thought it was really beautiful. I think Venat, for me, I know a lot of people had a really deep connection to a Scion, and maybe because I don't have all of the other expansions under my belt, maybe that's why, like, I do have relationships with them and they do feel real in a way. Like even my frustrations toward them feel like the frustrations I would have towards like a friend, where it's like, why do you have to do that? But like they feel at least cohesive. Like if something I don't like about that Scion, it's consistently like that. They're always that way. And so, but I think Venat was the person that like I most looked forward to every time she was in the expansion. Every time she was on screen, it's just like, more of you, don't go away. Like that was, I said that like on the boat. We're on the boat at the beginning of the expansion and it ends and I'm like, I'm not done. Like, what do you know? Like, I'm not ready. I know we have to get to the expansion, but like, I got time. Like hang out. And so I wanted more time with her. And I thought the fight was a really beautiful way to bring that to a close.
Speaking of time, like you were saying previously, the expansion is longer and all of that. And I got to be honest, that being the first time that I was caught up in an expansion, because like I started playing the game when Shadowbringers was already out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I noticed that even though I was taking my time through it, I definitely noticed now the way that I've played Endwalker was very different than the way that I've played all the other expansions. Because like I said to myself, I'm going to play the expansion, I'm going to do the raids and all of that in the previous ones, right? So I did Realm Reborn, Coils, Crystal Tower when it was still optional because it wasn't mandatory to do Crystal Tower. So I did that, and then I went Heaven's Word and did Alexander and the Pirates, and I did it like that for all the expansions. And then when I got to Endwalker, I was like, this is the one time where I don't feel like, okay, let's get through the MSQ so that we can keep moving forward. I was like, no, I was really just appreciating every moment. Like the moments where you actually get to sit down and hang out with the Scions. I thought that this is amazing. And I was thinking to myself, if anybody skips and they go to Endwalker and they get to one of these moments where it's just like 8 characters sitting around the table, just like eating a meal, they're going to be like, man, this sucks. This is boring. and I'm just sitting there like really loving every single, like Graha going on his burger and Alize taking out the little piece of pickle because she doesn't like it. I thought like, this is friggin' magical. This is awesome. I love every second of it. Wouldn't trade it for the world. But I know there's going to be a lot of people that if they skip, they're going to be like, this is boring as hell, dude. I don't even know who these people are. Why do I care about any of this? But yeah, that's the thing.
There was a lot of talking. I remember thinking that in Shadowbringers versus like patch content, like the amount of time, I think you play almost 2 hours before your first combat. The first, like at the beginning of the expansion. Mm-hmm. By the time you go through like the 30-minute boat scene and then you get settled in Charlayan and then you build up enough in the farm that you get to choose if you're going to Thavner, which turns out in my opinion to be a mistake. I should have done the library first. And so like you're almost 2 hours into the expansion before you use a single global cooldown, which does feel like, for the fact that we're playing a game and we're not watching Netflix, it does feel like a lot. And so I can see how people who are like, yeah, I mean, I like the story, but I also play video games. Yeah, for people that are binging and go straight through, for us, we'd all been hungry. We've all been doing battle content for weeks waiting for this. Mm-hmm. And we come in hungry for story. But somebody who literally finishes 555 and then immediately jumps into Endwalker, they're like, okay, let's do this. And then there's just 2 hours.
It's going to be rough. Yeah.
It's a lot. And it doesn't warn you that boat scene's long. It's just like, yep. Yeah, of course it's long. Like every other time in the game, it's like, hey, you might want some popcorn. Take a second.
Yeah, the last boat scene
all boats are 30 minutes.
Like last boat scene of travel ended up running into a dungeon. So it's like, oh, we're gonna get on the boat. Oh, we're in a dungeon. I was like, hey, here. I was like, all right, here we go.
How sick was that 1.0 reference, by the way?
Oh, it's so sick.
Yeah, I love
like
that.
I love every like.
Please
that's one of the
elaborate.
things- so when you're on the boat going to Charlayan, it is legitimately the 1.0 opener. Outside of the fact that then you go on deck and it's Hydaelyn as opposed to the ships being overrun by monsters, and then the tutorial starts. Like it was like legitimately shot for shot, movement for movement. I was like, this is my 1.0. Like
so that's interesting. Because I remember when I was watching that, I was like, this seems because I've seen those 1.0 cinematics, and I was like, this definitely feels like those cinematics that I've seen before, but obviously I don't have as big of an attachment to 1.0. So I was like, I'm probably just mistaking things, but no, it's good to know that that wasn't the case.
Yeah, 2.0 Lemsa is reminiscent of it.
Reminiscent, but not shot for shot.
It's not for shot for shot. It is just reminiscent. And I think it was meant to pay tribute.
It was that same thing with the Shadowbringers trailer. Like when you have that callback to you being an archer out in the, walking, I was like, I really appreciate that yes, that was a hard time for Square Enix, but like the players who were there, like we were there and we supported it. And because of that, 2.0 became, and not just the players who supported it, but the team that actually said, hey, we gotta do this thing. And so, but that we can't not acknowledge that. And I don't think 1.0 defines 14 anymore. I think that changed with Heaven's Word and Stormblood specifically for me is when it's like, yeah, now it's, like the fact that articles still reference it is kind of humorous at this point. But at its core, like I really appreciated it, and to an end. In fact, Ferris actually asked, like, what do you guys think about Meteion and her reasoning behind all that? And it's like at the end of the day, like I thought that was something that was the appropriate end to this entire saga. Because if not Zodiarch, if not Hydaelyn, if not Zenos, who is it now? Do I think they ask was the reasons good or bad? I think they're bad. Like clearly they were wrong. Clearly they were like, but they were very relatable. Like if you start factoring in all these things and you start losing hope and you give in to despair, like despair in and of itself, breeding that emotional power of despair and how that like percolates and it can affect your soul, affects your whole outlook on things. And then all of a sudden you get into that spot that the only mercy is nothing. The only mercy is death. And it's like, okay, no, you're missing the point. Anyway, what do you guys think?
The whole expansion was really existential. And I think a lot of it, when you look at any one person, a lot of it showed what happens, what's false when you take a limited understanding of an idea and you just let that run loose, right? If you just take a Wikipedia understanding of nihilism and you don't take the time to talk to somebody that, is a nihilist and has complexities in their thoughts about that, then it's like, oh, so everything's pointless. Cool. I got it. And then you just move on. And it's like, no, not everything's pointless. And so I think that for her to say, like, I understand emotion and then I see the inevitable outcome of it and then just full stop, I don't need to look any further. Like that is a really good commentary on just, the way we consume games, the way we consume media these days. Like you have to process 6,500 news articles a day. So you only have time to read the headlines. And so you have to read a headline, make up your mind, move on to get to the next thing. And you end up missing all of this context. And so like, I think she was a perfect commentary on all of this. And I totally understand how she got there as a being that was expressly built just to feel every feeling without limit. Just all of one thing and nothing else contextually to process it. Like she was not taught to do combat. She was not taught, like she was just built to be an intellecty and everything else was to manifest that.
I looked at that as like, there's one thing to me that usually motivates me a lot as a content creator. Cause like sometimes like a long time ago, I'd be going like, dude, what am I doing? Like making videos about video games. Like, why does this even matter? Right. And it's like, I would get like messages on Twitter or sometimes in my comment section of people telling me like, oh man, your videos helped me through like this really dark time or something like that. Yeah. So I associated the story that they were telling with Meteion to like, almost like people that are dealing with some really big mental stress and, you have to try to like help them overcome it in a way. and that actually resonated with me quite a bit from that aspect of it, because like it's a huge motivator to me whenever someone tells me, like, oh man, you helped me out through like this dark moment in my life or whatever with your videos. And I was like, that makes me super happy. I'm happy about that. And it's like one of the things that keeps me going. And the whole Meteion storyline resonated a lot with me with that, because she's just like super desperate. She's just like, no, everything's going to end. I'm just going to end everything like super fast. And they're like, no, here's a flower. Okay. Well, let's just keep things as they are. Let's forget the fact that you genocided God knows how many people. Okay. But here's this flower.
Yeah. So like when I first came across Meteion and I was going through the story, I was kind of like, the final boss is like this emo kid. It's kind of like the first like knee-jerk reaction to it, right? And then as I thought on it really more, I kind of realized that Meteion was like really genius on a level that I didn't really think of at first, right? So does anyone recall what Meteion's like favorite food was?
Caramel apple.
Yes.
Well, that's because it was Hermes, right?
Yeah, but do you know what I like? I'm like 90% sure like that's an allegory for. It's like the forbidden fruit of like the knowledge of like good and evil, like biblical stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
And so the metaphor there is that she eats that fruit and she learns about good and evil. And yeah, like that brings and what happens after that, right? Like mankind like falls from like paradise, right? They're no longer immortal, right? Like they were in the Garden of Eden, and that's like a whole like biblical parallel. I thought that was like, oh,
it's also heavily Greek. So like
yeah.
it's all portrayed through everything Elpis and beyond, all the vocabulary, all the concepts, like everything about the Asians it's so Greek.
And realizing that, I was like, oh, that's what they're trying to like paint here. And Meteion in a greater sense also represents sort of like a voice within us who kind of looks around, and especially within like these past like 2 years, it's been really easy to look around you and just see nothing but despair and pointlessness and death, and just think like, why is it all even here? And I feel like launching this story like right now, specifically at this time, also makes it resonate even more, like makes the arc with Meteion even more relatable, especially. But yeah, realizing that like the parallel there, sort of like representing like, mankind's own fall from grace within certain religions and mythologies there, and how those parallels tie into Meteion, made me have like this really great like big brain like appreciation of what Meteion is.
Yeah. Really, I like that analogy. I never even think about it in terms of like the apple but in the fall. But
I kept wondering, it's like, why do they keep mentioning that she likes candy apples? And I was like, oh, it's because like once she gets the knowledge of like good and evil, it gets like
never feed a Meteion. Get them wet.
Well,
don't feed him after midnight.
When she connects, all of a sudden, like you see her and just get flooded by all this information all at once, and it's just like, that in and of itself, it's such. I liked how that was all handled. I like that it was all set up in the way that it was. As a veteran, as somebody who's been covering this game for 13 years, like I really felt like my time was respected. I really felt like my journey was definitely worth it. And so like I don't have any complaints outside of the normal complaints that I've had about this game for the last like 8 years. So it's like my critique of Final Fantasy XIV remains intact to this day. And it comes down to, I've pretty much capped out all of my crafters and gatherers. And then I'm like, I miss getting experience. I wish there was some post level cap experience value, something. Just give me a box, give me a piece of candy every time I metaphorically level up post level cap, just to say thanks. I don't care. But like, that's like when it comes down to it, like, I don't know. I just have an addiction to, I guess, gaining XP, but that's been my continual critique this whole time. Do you guys have any final thoughts as we wrap up the show? And we go into typically a post show occasionally in which that we kind of answer questions and things like that. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. My chair's a little broken, so I'm going to go find a like some kind of screw or something to kind of lock it in place. But let's start with you, Night Sky. Where can people find you? You got any final thoughts?
Oh man, final thoughts on Endwalker is basically what an amazing expansion. I don't know what they're going to do at 6.1. But I hear that the name is supposed to be somewhat on the nose. That's what like Yoshida was saying. It's kind of obvious. Oh, I'm kind of wondering what the name of 6.1 is going to be.
It's going to be Mericidia.
Yeah.
6.1 Mericidia.
I saw someone online joking that 6.1 will be called So What's Next? And I was like, perfect. That's what they should call it.
A boat to Corvus.
But the next destination or something. But yeah, like that's what I'm really looking forward to. And yeah, other than that, if you want to find me, you can find me on youtube.com/TheNightSkyPrince, or you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/TheNightSkyPrince.
Rory, how about you, man?
You can usually find me on youtube.com/Rurikon or twitch.tv/Rurikon. And for final thoughts, my biggest thought about this one is like, Endwalker is the embodiment of please don't skip to Endwalker. Because like I feel like Endwalker doesn't stand on its own. So it's like, whereas you could kind of like judge, okay, this is Realm Reborn, this is what you get, this is Heaven's Word, this is what you get, this is like, and there's connection and flow through all of them. But you know, when you get to Endwalker, it's like there is no Endwalker without a Stormblood. There's no Endwalker without a Heaven's Word. There's no Endwalker without a Shadowbringers. You know, that's the vibe that I feel from Endwalker. But yeah, that's just like my final take on that.
Chris.
I definitely don't think, like, I think with Shadowbringers, it felt jaded to not get nominated for best sound. And with this one, it's like, I get that it's best sound for us. And somebody did post a link to, they did name all of those versions of answers. They're not answers. And so like, this is for us. This is internal. This is fan service. Endwalker, like Shadowbringers was meant to invite in the world to this beautiful story. And, you know, A Realm Reborn was meant to invite in the world for this beautiful story. But Endwalker's for us. It's an internal gem. It was designed for this, you know, it feels large community to us, but when you go compare it to like mobile platforms, which we were talking about before the show started, like it's nothing. Like it is a very intimate experience. And I'm really thankful for it. So I look forward to seeing what the next 2 years holds.
And just shout out to all of our supporters: WG Productions, Be Righteous, Redline Gamer, Red Rocket, Dark Wolf, Psycho, Cordell, and Keelan for their support here over at Ginger Gaming Radio to help keep podcasts like this rocking and rolling. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. Hopefully you guys hang out through the after show, but go follow these guys. Their links are all in the description. Rory is streaming right now. Chris is streaming right now. Night Sky, I think, is the only one not technically streaming right now.
Yeah.
But you should absolutely go check them out if you haven't. And if I'm introducing you to any of these amazing creators, then I honestly am very privileged to do so. Guys, this has been Crystal Core Radio, episode 104. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And hopefully we'll see you in the post show or our next episode. But until then, take care.